Hello, hello, good morning, and happy Friday. It is, gosh, I can't believe it. It's May 30th. We're almost in June on Sunday. I guess that's halfway through the year. Welcome to another episode of the TMI Show, the Ted Manila Information Show. That is
Not
the
quite
Ted
halfway
over
through
there.
the year. 1 month.
Almost.
One more month.
Yeah, but once you hit June, it's like, you're like, okay, it's 6 months into the year, so it's halfway through. But technically, that's the same, Ted. It's like the same thing that you men, and I'm going to blame you men, tell us about being pregnant, because it's not really 9 months. 40 weeks is actually 10 months. So when we're pregnant, yeah, you guys lie.
No, it's
not.
not. 40
weeks of
No, it's
pregnancy.
not. No, as a former banker, I keep
It's
track
the
of this
end.
stuff.
It's
There's
the end.
4.3 weeks per month.
I was going to say 4.2
So-
something, 4.27
No,
or something.
roughly 4.3.
Roughly.
So it's not
So
40. It's not 10 months.
But
But it's a little bit over 9
weeks.
months. It's
Yeah.
like 9 months and like 5-6 days.
Yeah. So you hit the 10-month mark, but anyway, and they don't even know exactly how
No,
long.
if you're pregnant 10
anyway.
months, you're really maybe not a human. You might be a pachyderm.
Plus they don't know exactly when the conception happened. But anyway, point is we're
That's true.
already halfway through the year. That's the Ted.
Well, you might know
Federal.
if you only have sex like every few months.
I'm Manila Chan.
My mom claimed that she remembered the exact moment. And she was like, I was like, because it wasn't happening that much. And she's like,
Oh. Oh, well.
But she didn't, but she was divorced. So she might just be like, she might just been like ragging on my dad and unfairly, which is entirely possible.
That's true.
So,
that is very possible. So as you can see with the way this is starting, this is a Friday episode.
Oh, just you wait. Just you wait for the premium. Holy cow.
Later today, we will be posting up a weird premium episode that is something that you would only talk about on Fridays. So we'll be posting it later this evening. So make sure you have become a Rumble Premium subscriber so you can see all of that low pro content that's Rumble exclusive. Otherwise, we are live here on the free show Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern time. So please be sure to like and follow this channel wherever you're consuming this content. Today we have a guest, not for very long, but she's joining us a little bit later. We're going to talk about today being the 20th anniversary of the Natalee Holloway death murder mystery. I can't believe it's been 20 years.
I don't know if it's really a mystery anymore. It was a mystery at the time.
Well, no, I still say it's a mystery because her body's never been recovered. Joran Sloot, the supposed confessed killer, there are a lot of holes to his story. I mean, I believe he killed her, but we're going to talk to somebody from the Alcatraz East Crime Museum. I'm so
excited about this. I got to tell you,
it's weird. I mean, they have like John Wayne Gacy stuff. They have Ted Bundy stuff. It's definitely a weird Friday show. That's today's vibe. But also, we're going to be talking about the massive wildfires. Again, we're under attack from Canada. The Canadians are attacking America again with bad air. Russia, surprise, surprise, the BBC has just discovered that Russia is raking in billions of dollars from their fossil fuel exports.
Since when have people wanted to buy, oil? I just never heard of that before.
Cheap oil. And then NATO looking to increase its troop numbers by 50%. So we'll break that all down for you in just a moment. So with that, let's hop right into it.
Let's do it. Well, we got to go fast because we have that guest coming in, so keep it right here. A lot to talk about. Wildfires in the Kanatastani provinces of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, which of course share a border with the U.S., the country you live in and therefore care about, have prompted provincial authorities to declare a state of emergency. Tens of thousands of people have been ordered to leave their homes. Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe says the situation is unlikely to get better anytime soon. The evacuation of 17,000 people, most of whom will probably go to Winnipeg, which is the provincial capital, is the biggest evacuation Manitoba will have seen in most people's living memory, Premier Wab Kinew said during a news conference Wednesday. Winds blowing north to south will probably push the Kanatastani smoke into the Midwest today and over the weekend. Northern Minnesota is at the highest risk for crappy air quality. A more expansive smoke plume will then move southward today and over the weekend, with Milwaukee, Chicago, and Detroit all possibly seeing crappy AQI and low visibility in the afternoon and evening. Manitoba fires have burned 491,000 acres so far this year, according to the Canadian Interagency Forest Fires Center. Hey, guys, less counting of the fires, more putting them out. A corporation owned by federal and local fire agencies. There are nearly 160 wildfires burning across Canada, the majority of which are out of control. Canoe says the military will be involved in the evacuations due to the scale of the orders. The state of emergency will be in effect for 30 days. Prime Minister Mark Carney says his and Canoe are in close contact. The federal government, that's the federal Canadian government, stands ready to assist Manitoba's provincial wildfire teams. The Wildfire Service in Manitoba says there have been 102 wildfires in the province so far this year, well above the average. Normally by this time, it would be more like 78. According to the CIFFC, there were 158 fires across the country. By early yesterday, 83 were classified as out of control. British Columbia and Alberta accounted for at least 102. 154 million acres in Canada have burned so far this year. Last year, the total area was 13 million acres. So I guess that's a little better. Abnormally dry or drought conditions have affected parts of Manitoba that are dealing with the wildfires. No rainfall of any note is forecast for at least the next week, unfortunately, because that's the main thing you would need. In 2023, of course, Canada experienced its worst wildfire season in modern history. 42 million acres burned, and of course, that brought record-breaking air pollution here to the United States. I still remember the AQI here in Manhattan when it looked orange, like wow. that. Remember, what was that movie? Blade Runner 2047, where everything looked orange. It looked just like that here in Manhattan. AQI was over 400. And just so you know, anything over 60 is unsafe. The fires also brought record-breaking air pollution. I talked about that already. A study published last year found that the frequency and magnitude of extreme wildfires around the world have doubled since 2003, either due to climate change or maybe, if you believe in that, God. So I'm going to say climate change.
Yeah, could God create climate change?
Yes. I mean, absolutely. That would be the Catholic conception of science, right? Like sort of like, the Catholics are like, okay, well, so we believe in evolution, but we think God guided evolution. God created evolution.
That's right. So yeah. I'm shocked that the Canadians are not getting rain, considering the whole month of May. I feel like, today's sunny. Finally, here in the district, we have been rained on, dumped on all of May. And it's not usually like that here in Washington, D.C. I've been here almost 11 years. And usually by May, it is scorching hot outside. We have like a brief respite between winter and summer, being spring, being like the 2 weeks that the cherry blossoms happen. And then it's hot and humid and sunny. We have been wet and rainy, like I said, with trees falling all over everywhere here in Northern Virginia. And it's weird to hear that Canada, that far north, isn't getting any rain the last couple of years.
It's a drought.
Yeah.
We have a drought here in New York City, too. It's hot. It's going to rain. It's been going on for years. Where, it basically doesn't rain here anymore. You could throw away your umbrellas.
Really?
It's going to rain today and tomorrow, but it's just very rare.
Yeah, but that'll help you
I would
guys.
say living in New York City, when I moved here in the 80s, I'd say it rained about one out of every 3 days on average, or, snowed in the winter.
Or even New York City.
That's just not true anymore. Now it rains like
early
one out of every 20 days, or every 30 days. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
And not much. You don't get like a torrential you don't get a torrential downpour anymore.
I remember summer storms just randomly rolling in many days, like in the early 2000s. And I guess this article citing changes from 2003, between 2003 and now, there's a noticeable shift in in weather patterns. And weather patterns are, of course, people are going to argue that are different than climate patterns and, historical climate, blah, blah, blah. I'm no expert in that. But I will say 20 years, just from the 2000s on, I think there's been a dramatic change from, let's say, the 1980s to the 2000s, right? That's where I have memory from the 80s to 2000, that time frame. I feel like it didn't change all that much, and then something happened. Like I don't know what, but there was a rapid change. Just like in LA in the 80s, we had lots of earthquakes, and suddenly it's been silent. I mean, little tremors, yes, but I feel like something is up with Mother Earth. They've been predicting Yellowstone to have that massive super volcano erupt any day now.
That'll be awesome.
Poor Robbie. But they say it'll be like mass extinction.
He can crash at Chateau Clovis anytime.
I don't know if there's this is any signs of Mother Nature getting ready to do something catastrophic, but they've been saying the super volcano where Robbie's at over in Montana at Yellowstone, that it's due to erupt. And I feel like, and this is me being hippy dippy, I'm not a scientist, I don't know, but I feel like Earth tells you things. You just have to look at the signs and connect the dots. And I feel like something could happen. I'm on volcano watch, Ted, in Hawaii and like in Iceland, any place there's volcanoes. I'm fascinated by volcanoes. And because there's in the Ring of Fire been a lack of volcanic activity, but a massive amount of fires, I feel like there's something there. I don't know what, but I feel like there's something there.
Something's happening here. What it is?
Something's happening. Clear. I can't put my finger on it, but I feel like there's some sort of natural catastrophe that is very heat related, whether it's lava.
You're just having an instinct.
Fires. Yeah. Something very hot is something very heat related.
Well,
is my best
climate
guess.
Change is very heat related.
So I'm going to say super volcano, and Robbie better drive away fast.
Well, the good thing about about volcanic activity is, of course, it is kind of like a hurricane. It's coming actually weeks beforehand. I mean, it's kind of like there's no excuse.
Now.
Remember, when Mount St. Helens blew in, was that Washington State?
Washington State.
Basically, there were people who we knew. I mean, I think weeks before, maybe a month before. People chill. I'm going to stay because I like it here. Okay, well, you're not going to like it there much longer. But you do know it's coming. So it's not like a tornado where you're hanging out and then 3 minutes later you're up in the air. I mean, there's nothing you can do really.
Well, yeah, it can, because tornadoes can take wild turns. And as we learned from Dr. Reese, or at least I don't remember if I was talking to him off camera or whatever, but Dr. Reese explained that these fires have, they create their own ecosystems, basically.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and that it sucks in wind and creates its own fire NATO, basically, and it creates its own atmosphere, and it can self-sustain. So I don't know if that's what's happening. I mean, maybe this is something.
What's going on? I mean, what you have to understand is why Canada, right? Well, so mainly there's a lot of things that are interrelated. We had
there's a lot of trees there.
Well, there's a lot of trees there, but why are they all so dry, right? So they're not normally. So, like you pointed out, there is a drought. That's part of the reason that it's so dry. But also, there's climate change has affected animals that affect these trees. So, for example, there's a beetle that has been afflicting the Canadian trees and killing them. So you have a dead tree.
Drying them out, right?
So the tree is dead, right? So when the tree's dead, it dies. I mean, it's dry. But of course, obviously, it would be less of an issue also if it was raining all the time. Then it would be a dead, soggy log. But it's not. It's a dry tinder, right? Now, why is the beetle out of control? The beetle's out of control because the birds that ate that beetle no longer can live there because it's too warm for them. So they had to leave. So the beetles are running wild. And so, this is kind of how the balance of nature stuff works.
Yeah. It's very delicate. It's just like the human body, just a little bit too much this way or a little too much that way.
Yeah, like we
And
hear
it
about
shifts the
this
complete
measure, which I
balance.
think is unfortunately very confusing. I don't think climate scientists are very good at messaging to at least the American public, who are, have about a fourth grade education. But
Well, in a non-science way. That's
but
the
like, for
thing.
example, so the benchmark that they talk about is you'll hear about that. We can't go over 1.5 degrees Celsius. No one knows what that means. We don't even know what Celsius means. Yeah, what's that?
I don't even know.
But basically, around 1750 to 1800 is when industrialization, the Industrial Revolution, which we all studied in school, when it began, mostly in England, but also in the United States. And that's when human beings started pumping a ton of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. At that point, so that's considered like a benchmark. Now, it's not to say that human beings never pumped carbon dioxide into the atmosphere before 1750.
Sure.
They did, but it was in far smaller numbers. But we did affect the climate, but on an incremental level, because there were far fewer of us and we burned less shit. But for example, stuff that we don't talk about, pre-Columbian, pre-1492, the American Indians, they logged and burned down the forests that are now in the Great Plains. The Great Plains weren't the Great Plains. There was a big forest. And the Indians, they built houses, they built roads, they built all sorts of stuff ever before Whitey ever showed up, right? So, but still, that was at such a low level. It was like,
right.
Then suddenly, CO2.
Whitey showed up.
Whitey shows up and
did it
starts
at scale.
And starts building, at scale, starts said, perfectly.
I'd like to point out
that
anyway, Whitey is very good at doing everything at scale, whether it's like killing.
That's what Whitey be doing. Whitey always be at scale.
Always scaling up.
Yep.
Logging.
Mega.
Eating.
Yeah. Yep.
Eating, consuming.
Killing.
At scale.
Colonizing.
At scale.
Warring.
Because, all that shit existed before, obviously, in every culture, every country, but never at scale.
Right. So at scale, although there's some examples of that. If you read the book Collapse, it'll talk about like how the Inca civilization, like basically, ended itself due to environmental degradation. But anyway,
they weren't good at scaling then, Ted.
They scaled too much.
Clearly.
Also. Anyway, point is that's the benchmark, roughly 1750. So basically, the average global temperature it's been calculated by model after model after model that if the Earth tips over 1.5 degrees Celsius, average temperature over the over 1750-ish Celsius, you're going to end up, which I think is like about 2.3 degrees Fahrenheit.
Well,
that's going to basically we go beyond the point of no return, and we're at that point now. We are.
I'll say
and every little
last
point, 0.01 degree makes a huge difference.
0.01. Well, last thing I'll say about this is I'm getting news from California, from the motherland, that now after those are massive fires that we had at the start of the new year, that now insurance companies are no longer wanting to insure in those fire-prone areas.
Oh yeah. No, I
They're
mean,
no longer.
Can you blame them? I mean, there's like no way. I mean, are you kidding?
Yeah. So the people that want to rebuild their homes, they're kind of
sucks to be them.
SOL. Like you own that piece of parcel with a home that's burnt down to the ground, and you can rebuild, but you can't get homeowners insurance.
Well, and you can't sell it to some sucker because they can't get a mortgage to buy the house because they can't get insurance.
So this is like, and the insurance companies are all citing climate change.
Well, and insurance companies are not really people who I have a lot of sympathy for.
They're not great. They're not lovely people, but
they're not lovely people. But I don't blame them here. They're not wrong.
No, they are not wrong there. And you and I have actually said this before. And and God bless, I love my Californians, but California is actually an inhospitable fucking place. Like the climate, the weather is nice, but to live at scale, which we're like the most populated state in the union, to live at scale like that, that state is inhospitable to that kind of lifestyle.
It's
you're
funny.
going against nature.
My ex was a Californian,
NorCal.
And she used to always talk about like, what a, like how comfortable she felt there. And I was like, but like I'm quoting, I was pre-quoting Manila here. I was like, but it doesn't feel that way. Like if you're driving anywhere, I don't know, outside of a city, you see all these dry, parched hills, these dead trees. You're like, if I broke down here, and let's say nobody stopped to help me, which, by the way, in Northern California would totally be the case. No one's going to stop and help you. They're
true.
the meanest people in the world. You get more help from like an SS concentration camp guard.
Hello, Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, they're the worst people at all.
They're all like Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah. She's like one of the nice ones. I mean, they're so mean. Yeah. I mean, and I know because I've been broken down on the side of the road with an old junker, and no one would stop to help me. The cops didn't stop to help me when I was flagging them down. So anyway, so when the cop finally stopped, they pulled a gun on me and tried to shoot me almost. But they did pull a gun on me. But anyway, yeah. So anyway, the point is, you're there. You're like, oh yeah, I'd be fucked. I mean, if I were here 10 hours without, like, say, a good supply of water, I might die.
Ted, you drive out an hour outside of Riverside County in Southern California, and then
that's
you get
east
into
of LA for people. Yeah,
you go eastbound out of Riverside County, and now you're in the Salton Sea. Now, if you drive through that area, like this is like Death Valley, Salton Sea, all that stuff, they kind of all blend together. And I used to traverse that area all the time.
A Death Valley, like a state that like Rhode Island doesn't have a Death Valley. You know what I mean?
It's a sign. If there's a place called Death Valley, there's probably not a great place. But anyway, there's a place near Death Valley called the Salton Sea. And one would think, I drove through there a million times driving back and forth between Yuma, Arizona and LA when I'd come home on the weekends from work to visit my mom. And I would always wonder, why the fuck is this place called the Salton Sea? There's not a fucking drop of water here. But apparently...
there is a reason, yeah.
Apparently, hundreds of years ago, there was like this shallow...
Manila, millions of years ago.
Pond.
Not
thousands and hundreds.
Millions, yeah.
But why would they name it that if, they weren't there to name it a million years ago? But anyway, at some point in California's history, it was called the Salton Sea because there was actually water there and this whole vast region. And now it just blends right into Death Valley. And I used to think I would be really screwed if my car broke down here because there are no payphones. I haven't seen any cops. There's no other cars driving. There weren't even cars driving by me. It was just me. And I thought,
all by your lonesome.
Like, I want rattlesnakes and mountain lions and
which are not that good.
Yeah. So I thought, why does anybody want to live here? Like, people, I see for sale signs. There's no water access anywhere. And I thought, California really doesn't want us to be alive here. It really doesn't, Ted.
It's a and place.
Now the insurance companies are proving that out. They're not insuring people to rebuild or buy properties in what they call fire-prone areas. So here you are, climate change.
Well, don't forget mudslides, which, by the way, mudslides follow fires, right? Because the fires come and then the trees are gone.
Scorch the land,
the roots that hold the land together.
Well, what you're looking at there, that's what basically all over California looks like. That's Manitoba. But when you have scorched earth, the land, it's parched, it's dry, it's dead. There's nothing holding anything down. And California is very, very hilly and very mountainous, actually.
Yeah.
And then when it gets that one rainfall, just that one, everything comes down. So there you
Lovely
are.
Place to live, really.
Really. So I get it. We have beautiful oceans, and the temperature isn't awful, right? It's temperate and soft, relatively, but it is not a hospitable place.
That is changing.
That's changing. It's just an inhospitable place, and we're forcing it
because our guest is coming on.
Yeah, I expect our guests soon.
Russia is still making bank despite all those sanctions. That, according to new data, which is, of course, helping to finance its war against Ukraine. But it's also just generally financing the Russian economy would probably be a more accurate way to put this. Since the beginning of the war in February 2022, Russia's made more than 3 times as much by exporting oil and gas than Ukraine has gotten in aid allocated by its allies. Although I got to say, that's kind of a strange comparison because, the one is like if the people, Ukraine's allies are giving Ukraine money, they're not getting anything back for it. They're just giving money to
bad ROI.
Whereas the people who are buying oil and gas from Russia are getting oil and gas. Anyway, it's like totally apples and oranges. Anyway, oil and gas are currently accounting for about a third of Russia's state revenue. In other words, because they've nationalized a lot of their oil and gas industry, which is something, frankly, we should do here in the U.S., and more than 60% of its exports. In the wake of the invasion, the allies of Ukraine, of course, imposed tons of sanctions against Russia. The US and the UK banned oil and gas from Russia. The EU banned seaborne crude imports. And whoever was playing the role of President Joe Biden probably almost certainly bombed the Nord Stream 2 oil and gas pipeline that was a joint venture between Germany and Russia. Anyway, despite all that, as of May 29th, that's to say yesterday, Russia has made over 883 billion euros. That's basically $1 trillion in revenue from fossil fuels since the beginning of the special military operation, including 228 billion euros from the sanctioning countries. That, according to the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, the lion's share came from EU member countries. EU countries continue to import pipeline gas from the ones that they didn't blow up directly from Russia until Ukraine cut off the transit across Ukraine in January of this year.
Right.
They still get crude oil piped into Hungary and Slovakia. Russian gas is still piped to Europe in increasing quantities via Turkey. That volume was up by 27% in January over the same period last year. Hungary and Slovakia are also, we already have that. Despite the West's efforts, in 2024, the Russians' revenue from fossil fuels only dropped by about 5% compared to the year before, compared to a 6% drop in the volume of exports overall. But it also saw a 6% increase in Russian revenues from crude oil exports overall, because they have new partners like China and so on, and a 9% year-on-year increase in revenues from gas. Russian estimates say that gas exports to Europe were up 20% in 2024, with LNG, liquefied natural gas, exports reaching record levels. Half of Russia's LNG currently goes to the EU. The EU's foreign policy chief, Kaja Kallas, says he explains this by saying the alliance hasn't imposed. Oh, is she? Okay. Has not imposed the strongest sanctions against Russian oil and gas because some countries in Europe fear an escalation of the conflict. You can't blame them for that. And because buying them is cheaper in the short term. Oh, and also everybody's economies rely on oil and gas. So there's that.
So, I mean, Ted, you and I have been saying this since the start of the SMO, that these sanctions weren't going to do anything except serve to hurt our European allies. And that proved out immediately with, especially in Great Britain, right? That first year, that first winter, prices went through the roof. People that ran little small mom and pop like little coffee shops and little pubs said that they couldn't afford to keep the lights on anymore because all the energy exports, obviously they weren't getting anything from the Nord Stream because number 2 was blown up. And then later parts of 1 was damaged. They found out. And then those sanctions, and really all it served to do was hurt its own people. And I think it's interesting that now, 3 years later, after you and I have made this assessment 3 years ago, that the BBC is finally arriving at the obvious conclusion. It was obvious from the jump, right? And we're not economists, we're just news people, and we're just talking heads. And it was very, very evident that this was bound to happen. And especially when they kept predicting the collapse of Russia's economy, that was not what was trending because Russia made, like you said, other deals with India, with China, and India has been sucking up all that cheap gas and they've loved it. The LNG exports are way up because guess what? The Europeans are buying Russian LNG via third-party exports, right? So somebody else buys the Russian LNG, goes to, a third-party country, and then sells it to the European Union. So either way, the European Union is still getting Russian LNG, still getting Russian crude from third parties. They're paying a middleman. So yeah, that's how Russia's actually making more money. So again, proof that sanctions don't work. They are not in lieu of diplomacy. And so I think that's really all we can say is, I told you so 3 years ago. I'm not even a professional economist. I'm just some news lady. I've been doing this a long time, but I've just it was fairly obvious.
Well, we have pattern recognition, right? That's what people like us. I mean, I'm really glad that you brought that up, Noah, because and we should we have one more thing to get to. But I just want to say that it is interesting on story after story after story how people like us who just pay attention and use common sense and are not experts in this field, in these respective fields at all, can just be like, oh, I see this coming. That guy running for Democrat for president, he's not looking he's looking a little long in the tooth. He's a little drooly. I don't know about that guy. It's I don't think he's too sharp. And then it's I said, no. And then the thing is, there's so much denial. There's such.
You're not a gerontologist.
You ain't no gerontologist. It's you're not a a petrocarbons expert. What are you not? You're not an oil geologist. But then they just they feed you this line of shit. And it's I think, people talk about the trust deficit in our, in our society. I think the trust deficit is less from being lied to than from the fact that while they're lying to you, they're lying to you. They know that and they don't care. I think it's about the fact that they're willing to insult your intelligence. And literally, they're you're stupider than we are, when actually the opposite is true. We're smarter than they are. And we know it, but they're trying to pretend, it's maddening.
I see what you're
really
saying.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of when did your parents, I don't know if your parents ever did this, but my mom would sometimes just try to feed me a line of shit and about something I knew she was lying to me. And I'd be like, no, there's not a fat guy doesn't in a red and white suit. He can't come down the chimney because we don't have a chimney. We have he comes down the flue. I'm the flue is 3 inches wide. Okay, what is he, a fetus? He's not coming through there. It's
oh my God.
And it's also, it's a big world. There's billions of people, billions of kids. How does he get around all
I got you.
It's and you just sort of and it's no, it really happens. And you're just oh, I hate you because
that's
you're
how
lying
the
to
news
me.
media treats everybody, basically, is telling us Santa Claus exists. And Santa Claus, children, if you're watching, you shouldn't be. But if you are, Santa Claus totally exists. So anyway, we should get to our guest, and then we'll save the other stories for the back half of this.
Perfect.
Because I know our guest has important crime stuff to do.
Well, not to commit, but to
no, not to commit. Yes,
to document.
Let me back up.
Okay.
There's a lot of crime news to get to. Obviously, in America, there's a lot of crime.
Yeah, well, of course, that's true.
So let's hit the draws and bring in our guest. Talk about the main talking topic here is the 20-year anniversary today, May 30th, 2025, 20 years since Natalee Holloway's disappearance. And we're going to bring on a guest to talk a little more about that and other weird crimes that Americans just love.
All right, so this is indeed, as Manila just pointed out, the 20th anniversary of the disappearance, or maybe the murder of, I guess it's probably the same thing, Natalee Holloway. For people who remember, she was part of what they call dead white woman syndrome, right? Or missing white woman syndrome. She was an attractive young woman who went 18 years old. She was on a high school graduation trip to Aruba. She vanished. She was last seen at a nightclub in Aruba with this creepy dude, Joran van der Sloot, and
Joran.
Joran. Oh, I'm sorry. Joran
Joran
Vandersloot
van der Sloot.
and Vandersloot, and two other dudes, Deepak and Satish Kalpo, on May 30th, 2005. Basically, for many, many years, it's one of those things like, we know you did it, but we can't prove it. Anyway, ultimately, he was involved in other stuff, a lot of other stuff. And he, in 2023, 2 years ago, confessed to killing her after he pled as part of a plea deal. He also pled guilty to extorting her mom, a lovely individual. Anyway, this was one of those, like, especially on Fox News, but all the cable channels were going crazy. And, obviously it kind of drove the family completely insane. He's currently serving time for extortion as well as time for murder in Peru. Where he killed 21-year-old Stephanie Flores. At that one, like, there was video of the two of them together. And she was killed exactly 5 years to the day after Holloway disappeared, which is super creepy.
Psycho. And the dude is a psycho.
And apparently the prison conditions there in Peru are very, very harsh. So if you're wondering if he's like cold chilling, well, he's cold, but he's not chilling. Anyway, so joining us to talk about true crime in general and America's fascination with the same is Allie Pennington, historian and writer who currently serves as the Artifacts and Programs Manager for the Alcatraz East Crime Museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. She has a BS in History from Belmont University and a master's degree in Info Science from University of Tennessee. With a passion for protecting history, she's worked diligently in the museum industry for several years. In 2021, Allie was recognized as a Tennessee Under 30 Emerging Leader of the Year. Through her work, she strives to bring history to life and preserve the past for future generations. And, Allie, I have some sympathy and interest in what your museum does, because many years ago, when I was friends with Johnny Ramone from the Ramones, I don't know if you're aware of his interest in this subject, but he was very interested in true crime, and he had in his house in LA, which I've been to. He had, among other things, a John Wayne Gacy original clown painting. He collected all sorts of ephemera from some of America's most notorious serial killers. And when I asked him, like, so why are you so interested in this? And he's like, duh, it's cool. so anyway.
So Allie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So first up, we were just talking about Natalee Holloway. This is obviously, you guys have a brand new installation, right, about this whole Natalee Holloway true crime that America was obsessed with 20 years ago. I think there's still obviously a lot of interest in her case because her body was never found. In your hunt to get all the artifacts to put in this installation, what do we know about poor Natalee's case at this point? I mean, we know that Joran, I don't know, says he owned up to it.
He did.
He was brought back here to face I don't know if it was a jury. I think it was a jury trial for extorting her mother, but the body's never been found. I guess the family is happy enough that he's serving time in Peru. What else do we know about this case that the media has failed to cover that you guys have uncovered by getting this stuff?
Yeah, so we worked really closely with her mother, Beth, when we were kind of crafting this display, and we've just worked with her for a long time. I think a lot of what Beth did throughout her search was trying to find justice for Natalee, because it's very likely that she will never be found. And so I think for their family, and I don't want to speak for their family, but just what, interviews that they've done and what we've talked to them about, they very much feel that closure now that he has faced those extortion charges, because he accepted a plea deal for the extortion charges because he was trying to basically in 2012 extort Beth, saying, like, you give me all of this money and then I'll tell you where Natalee's body is. And he never did that. So that's how he got back on the extortion charges. as part of the plea deal for those charges, he had to basically write a confession and what had happened that night. And so I think, 18 years at that point after Natalee went missing was when that confession came. And for them going 18 years and just having no answer, I think they finally got that closure that they needed surrounding, Natalee's death and disappearance.
Yeah, that's such a, I mean, I remember when this news broke, I was already working in the news industry, and I remember it was wall to wall coverage.
Why
And
this? I mean, that's what I want to know,
yeah,
right? Like, Allie, like, why do some cases, I mean, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. There were a lot of true crime things that happened there. And there were some cases that you could easily see in the 24-hour news cycle could have become huge cases, objects of great fascination. All over the country, there are things like that don't. And then every now and then there's the creepy North Carolina lawyer who, it's like, why him? Why some things, why not others?
I think, it's kind of a mix depending on the case, for sure. I think with Natalee in particular, it's every parent's worst nightmare that, your kid has grown up. She's just graduated high school. She's taking her first trip with her friends on her own, and she disappears while out of the country.
It's
and
the
so
relatability.
It's the relatability,
like
I think.
Eton Patz here in New York.
Right.
It was his first time that his mom ever let him go anywhere by himself.
Right. So I think part of it for sure is that relatability, because you look at, all of these kids went on this trip with her, but Natalee is the one who disappeared. And so I think it's definitely relatability is part of why certain cases stick or, get more attention. I think with Natalee in particular, the family also pushed really, really hard to make sure that her face was out there, to make sure that people were looking for her, because as soon as they heard that she didn't show up for her flight home, they were on their way to Aruba with, as many people as they could get to go look for her. So I think there's a combination.
Are white people more relatable in a white majority country, or is it also that white people have more power and ability to get in front of the cameras and raise hell, or is it both? Or
I think it's probably a little bit of both. Certain cases, when you look at, there's certain serial killers in particular who go after minorities or, forgotten groups of people, who, they are still people, and they are, they have families and they have people who miss them, but they don't get near as much attention as,
like the Gilgo Beach victims. Many of them were sex workers,
right?
And substance abusers, and society just didn't care that much about them. It didn't help that the county sheriff, who was in charge of all this, was incredibly corrupt, and therefore couldn't accept FBI help because he was worried that that his corruption was going to be exposed.
God.
In Suffolk County, Long Island.
Yes, correct. All correct.
Multi-layered,
correct. Yeah.
Multi-layered. I mean, yeah, that's why in the media we dub things, missing white girl syndrome is, I mean, we just saw a picture of Natalee, right? She's like a cute little blonde girl with big blue eyes and
very young.
Right. She was only 18. What was interesting was this international part with like these, I don't know, they're the Deepak, I forget their last name. These brothers, I don't know if they're Americans.
Alpo. No. They I know that Joran was a Dutch national who was actually living in Aruba. I believe they were from Aruba originally.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's right.
Yeah. So this is, they were arrested and let go a couple of times. These brothers, they ultimately didn't, I don't think, served any time. And it seems like Joran van der Sloot is the one and only person that did these horrific things. And we've heard the audio about him admitting how he killed her, like kicking her in the face really hard, when she was down, and then taking a cinder block to smash her head. I mean, just every parent's nightmare that this is how their kid ends, right? And very recently, I think she's from Virginia, another girl just went missing. Similar situation. I mean, just literally 2-3 months ago, I think maybe it was a very recent thing. I think it was a a girl from where I am here in Virginia. But same thing. She's just kind of vanished. There's a young white male that was involved that's also American from another state. She's just vanished off the island. And he, I think, has been extradited back to somewhere in the Midwest. But it totally reminded me of this case of Natalee Holloway all over again. These spring breaker, end of school year party goers, and one thing leads to another, and something horrific happens. So given the relatability part, is that what makes your crime museum like a popular destination? Because I looked up all these videos. There's all kinds of videos.
By the way, where is it located?
We're in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, which is the home of Dolly Parton. Sevierville technically is the home of Dolly Parton, but we're also right around.
So go see Dolly World and go see this. Yes,
yes, correct. Mm-hmm. So it's just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, which is in the foothills of the Smoky Mountains, is where we're at. Huh. I think as far as what makes our attraction and our museum kind of bring in people, we have just as humans, have a fundamental interest in the dark side of humanity. Just biologically, it's the same reason we watch and rubberneck at a car wreck. We are just fascinated by the dark side of humanity. For us, one of the big things with our museum is that we want to provide as many resources to people as possible so that they may not fall victim to a crime. So we're very education forward. We work with local law enforcement, federal law enforcement across the board. We work with survivors of crimes and victims' families and things like that. And so for us, education and just providing resources and knowledge to people who, may one day unfortunately find themselves in a situation that they, need that knowledge and those resources. So I think part of it definitely is relatability. Also, the true crime genre has just bloomed and blossomed and grown immensely in the last decade or so. And
all those podcasts now.
Yes, podcasts played a huge role in the growth of true crime. I mean, there's been true crime media for, hundreds of years. You look back, Edgar Allan Poe wrote the first detective novel that we know of in, I think, 1841. And so just as a society, we've always been interested in the macabre, and I think we just have. And I think really that our museum allows people not only to come in and find those resources, but also to review those cases and look at, what has happened in the past in a way that is safe, where they are not, experiencing crime against them, but they can recognize that dark side of humanity in a safe environment.
It's so weird. I mean, I reviewed some of this video of people that have gone to the museum, and to see, actual like here's somebody's, is it a death mask?
Yes, it's John Dillinger's death mask.
Wow.
And it's a first generation death mask. So, and also in that little case next to it is actually an eyebrow hair from Dillinger that came out when they poured the mask.
This is
they
just
used to do that a lot, right? Like they used to collect like little bits and pieces of notoriously, not necessarily criminals, but dead people.
Yeah, I mean, death masks were really popular.
Mm-hmm.
I saw stuff in here that was like the real clown costume of John Wayne Gacy, the Ted Bundy stuff. Like, this is really, like, it's dark stuff, but like you said, people are just naturally drawn to all. I'm personally not into true crime, but
I'm totally into it.
But when I start reading stuff, then I fall into it, right? Like, I generally am not into that stuff, but if I start down the rabbit hole, then I'll just fall. I'll just fall down the rabbit hole.
To me, Jean-Paul Sartre said that we're all defined by our worst actions. And if you think about it, like, legally, let's say you commit a crime. You're going to go to prison for that crime. They're not going to weigh like all the times you donated to like NPR They're, all the times you helped an old lady cross the street. You're defined by your worst action in our society. And, that I think that's part of the fascination here. It's like, we're everyone's capable of doing terrible things. Capable, not that they would, but we all have it in us. And if you don't believe that, like, look at war. You take ordinary people, you take them out, and you say, hey, go and kill that person that you have nothing against, and you do. And if you don't, you can go to jail. So it's like, we all have it in us.
Yeah. And we should note, we're looking, for example, at the Bernie Madoff stuff. And so it's not all grisly crime. It can be like, this was obviously the biggest scam in American history was Bernie Madoff. So there's other crime stuff there.
Yeah, absolutely. We cover everything that we possibly can under one roof of American crime and punishment. So we cover, outlaws in the Old West. We cover white collar crimes, famous trials. We also look at law enforcement and sort of the training process for them, and famous lawmen, and everything in between. So we try to cover as much under that American crime and punishment umbrella as we possibly can in one building.
Just today, right? The Bernard Kerik, former police commissioner of New York City, who was the head of the police on 9/11 and was praised for what he did that day. We'd also take note of the fact that he was sent to prison for being a tax cheat. And so, we all have the little angel and the little devil on our shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. And that I think you can definitely see in certain cases more than others, where you've got these, first time offenders who have done this horrible thing and have no, track record of committing crimes or even really being close to committing crimes. And then all of a sudden you've got this horrible human being who has, killed someone or has, stolen a car or whatever it may be. And that is what's remembered. I think you're exactly right with the quote, you're defined by your worst actions. It's just true.
I'm also fascinated by people who didn't necessarily plot it. There was a case where a young Orthodox Jewish kid in Brooklyn just happened to approach another member of the Orthodox community in Brooklyn for directions, and he was lost. And this guy had never committed any crime ever in his life. We don't even know that he ever double parked. But as he later recalled it, something flipped in him, and he was overcome with a desire to kill him, and he did. And it's like, if that kid had never walked up to that guy, he might have lived his entire life as a completely law-abiding citizen. But something like turned him to a murderer. It just like two jigsaw puzzle pieces coming together.
Snapped.
It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of cases that are like that. There's also, because you've got sort of criminals who just snapped and something happened and all of a sudden they were, doing whatever it was that they were doing. You also then, on the flip side of that, have people who plan for years and years and years and are slow and meticulous and are constantly, building up to whatever it is that they're going to do. Particularly, you see it with serial killers. They, start with small crimes and then kind of allow themselves to graduate higher and higher to more serious offenses before actually killing someone.
So that's a trend that you see with particularly serial killers, is that when they're young, they start off with like smaller things.
Yeah.
But are they violent?
When they're young. So it's not all serial killers because everybody's different. But most of them show some signs as, very young kids, things like harming animals or, having violent tendencies, misbehaving, there's also something to be said for trauma in the childhood and that kind of leading them down a dark road. There's, individuals who get introduced to pornography really, really early in their lives, and that eventually, grows to more violent things. And then
I
they
read
go
that
into
about Richard Ramirez.
Yeah, Richard Ramirez is one. Ted Bundy also describes kind of getting introduced into pornography and then kind of, going from soft pornography to more, violent and harsh things, and then ending up, killing a lot of women.
So weird. It's just yeah, I've never actually been to Tennessee. So I think
you
one
should.
of
It's
these
beautiful.
days when we drive down, because we're in Northern Virginia, so I don't know how many hours drive. I know. And so I would like to go see this sometime. So I think now we know you, Allie. So when I head down
Broadcast
there,
from the museum.
Give me a call, man. I'm here.
I would like to
do a
see all
walkthrough
of
for
this.
the show. Yeah.
This would be kind of weird. And I have to go to Dollywood, like obviously,
and Graceland. And Chattanooga, because the hiking.
I want to go to Tennessee because I know. I mean, now it's like a tourist destination, like in general, because everybody wants to go for the music and what have you. But then
Tennessee's
in Tennessee,
always been a tourism destination. Sorry,
but there's all these quirky little places. There's these quirky, tourist destinations that are not found elsewhere, like.
And the food's good too. Robbie, our producer, very quickly is asking. He wants your feedback about the Menendez brothers. What's your take there? I mean, is that I don't want to lead the witness. What do you think?
The Menendez brothers case is a very complex case.
Mm-hmm.
You've got two brothers who've been incarcerated for the vast majority of their life. I think. Their parents were killed in 1989, I do believe. Mm-hmm. And so they've been locked up for a very, very long time. I think there's something to be said for, have they reformed themselves? Do they still need to be in prison? On the other hand, they killed their parents and they, went back into the house a second time to make sure that they were dead, and then created this story of how they, found their parents dead when it was actually them behind it. So I think, I'm not a judge, but there's two sides to that coin, and it should be interesting to see what the judicial process looks like for that.
We haven't decided as a country, like really what is imprisonment for, or the death penalty for? Is it to keep society safe, or is it vengeance?
Well, it's also obviously especially it's vengeance. Right. Now that the another true crime documentary on Netflix about them, kind of highlights their alleged child abuse as they were growing up, that this is cause for reexamination. But obviously that is one of those crimes, even still, since 1989, has still captured America's attention, and people are still interested in that. And I think it's largely because that family was not relatable. They're a rich, wealthy family in Beverly Hills. These boys were driving around in Porsches, right, in high school. Like their dad was a big-time music producer. So, that kind of fascination, like, ooh, rich kids killing parents. Ooh. So that's, it works in the opposite way too, where, we're kind of peeking into the dark side of the elite, right? The Beverly Hills type. So I think that's part of it too for those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think especially as the genre has grown, cases reappear and it reignites that interest. So some things, fall out of sort of the main conversation in the true crime community, and then you'll do a Netflix documentary and all of a sudden it'll be a hot topic again. This definitely happened with Jeffrey Dahmer in the release of the Netflix series in 2022. It was a case that everybody sort of knew about, and it had some public attention to it, but when that docuseries came out, I mean, it just went wild.
Yeah, I would love to go visit. So if and when I get down there, I'm going to look you up. I appreciate you giving us your time and explaining this America's fascination. I mean, I feel like this is an American thing because I've never heard of crime museums like, I don't know, in in Mumbai, India. Like
maybe not.
You know, there's one in the UK.
Yeah,
I could see that. I could see that.
Jack the Ripper.
France has a whole museum just to one crime, the Dreyfus Affair.
Yep.
Well, maybe
it's a good museum
Western,
too.
Maybe it's a Western culture thing, because I can't think of any place in Asia that is into.
Yeah.
And by the way, that would be a cool museum. I mean, like the Tibetans alone, the methods of torture and death are so extravagant and over the top. You can't believe it. No, the Tibetans, like we have the, like we think they're like, they're all like the Dalai Lama. No. They could be really cruel back in the day.
Well, if we had like a Genghis Khan museum or something, that was
a
lot of death and destruction there.
Yeah.
But and people are interested.
War. That's different.
Well, it's just conquering. That's But again, my point is, it seems like a very American, if not just American, then a Western culture thing. Because me being Asian American, I can tell you, it's just not a topic that like many Asians talk about, and especially not in Asia. I've never heard of my friends or family tell me that there is anything like this, like the Alcatraz East Museum, anywhere in Asia. So I don't know, but
I doubt it. Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating place. So if people are, looking for road trips, if you're in America, head down there, go to Dollywood, go to, go see the gruesome
stuff. Out of you mentioned the West. This comes out of our Old West mentality. We're pioneer country, the folk hero thing. They don't do that in Asia, because it's like, if you do bad things, you're just a bad person, and that's to be not thought about, much less,
that's true. It's very American gunslinger culture. Like,
although there certainly are serial killers in other countries. I mean,
obviously,
Citizen X, great movie to see about the famous Soviet serial killer.
Yeah, obviously, this serial killers are not exclusive to America. Obviously,
no.
Obviously, we're just good at publicizing our serial killers. That's all.
Yeah,
where other countries don't. But Allie Pennington, thank you so much for your time. You are great. I hope you'll come back because like I said before you came on, we're like the capital of crime, or at least it seems like it, because of our news cycle, unfortunately.
Yeah, and there's always something going to come. I bet there's going to be news on Gilgo Beach soon. So
they're working on setting the trial date. So should be interesting.
Allie's probably working on getting stuff. Just saying.
I'm all over the map when it comes to crime.
That basement's got stuff for your museum.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
Interesting. That's interesting. And maybe an architect I don't know, very weird. Ted's up in New York. Allie Pennington, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for giving us all this insight into weird American psycho killer. I don't even know how to frame it, but yeah, this is our little peek into the minds of these killers. Thank you so much, Allie.
Thanks for having me.
Hi, Allie, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Well, that's fun. I shouldn't say it's fun.
It was fun. Totally fun.
It was fun talking to Allie, but the stuff that the museum covers is, there's some stuff in there where you're like, ooh, I remember that. Like I said, I remember the Richard Ramirez killings because some of the families were in Whittier, where I grew up, not like 2 miles from my house. So I remember a brush, me and my neighborhood friends, a brush with the Night Stalker. So that's kind of, it's dark. But anyway, we've got a couple more things, Ted, that we should get to just real briefly.
Very, very, very
briefly.
All right, here we go. NATO will raise its target for how many troops its countries, member states, will need to provide for NATO by up to 50%. The 32 countries who are in NATO currently have a target of 80 brigades. They would raise that to between 120 to 130. NATO will ask Germany next week, because it's not like they've ever caused problems with the military, to contribute an additional 7 brigades. That would be 40,000 troops or so. NATO has been ringing the alarm because of what a threat Russia supposedly poses to the alliance, because, they're just dying to invade. They just never do. And so assessments vary, but one judgment from Denmark's Defense Intelligence Service says it thinks Russia would be able to wage a large-scale war against NATO in the next 5 years if the U.S. refuses to be involved. some observers say the Russians could be prepared to launch more limited assaults on NATO in as little as 6 months after the war in Ukraine ends. These people are paranoid mofos. I mean, they really need to calm down. But anyway, NATO will set this new goal to be put forward by member countries. And anyway, the size of a brigade, by the way, is about 5,000 soldiers. Defense ministers from across NATO will meet in NATO HQ in Brussels on June 5th next week. This will be the first time since Trump came back for his second term. And the first summit will be held in The Hague, that's in Holland. So NATO says it would need about 50 more brigades to be able to defend itself against a Russian attack. First of all, newsflash, if the Russians ever did attack for some insane reason, they probably wouldn't be coming by land. It'd probably be nuclear missiles. But anyway, there are doubts about how many of NATO's members would be able to recruit more soldiers or to produce more military equipment that would be needed. Military personnel and analysts say countries like Britain have been focused on fighting counterinsurgency wars, particularly after 9/11, rather than what a conflict with Russia would look like. And I guess that's probably because there won't be one. So there's probably not much need to prepare for something. I guess it's more likely they will be invaded from outer space. They probably should spend money preparing on that.
Ted, this is kind of like in the same way that we generally as a society laugh at like the doomsdayers. Yeah. It's like that. It's like dude, like, oh, no, you're building a bunker.
Scam. This is that again. We talked a little bit earlier about like, when the government's lying to you, and you're being lied to. The Europeans people know they're being lied to. They know Russia's not coming. No. The Russians ain't coming. True. The Russians ain't coming.
I don't think that's true. No, I think that's the reality is the Russians ain't coming. But I think the media apparatus across Europe has been so deluged with the idea that the Ruskies are coming, that people have started to believe it. And I talked to Professor Glenn Deason about this, and Glenn tells me it's true. Glenn tells me that even in where is he? Norway. He says even in Norway that college students in Norway right now don't realize that the Russians were on the good side fighting Adolf Hitler. College students. They think they have now been reprogrammed. So he thinks this is something that's all across the European Union, that children have been reprogrammed to create a new Cold War and hate the Russians. That's and I'm paraphrasing obviously, but Glenn Deason is pretty good at assessing, what's happening on the ground. So there's that.
Well, but by the way, we need a quick shout out to thank you to Nerd on the Rumble chat. He kicked in $10 towards the cause. Thank you. Well dressed
nerd.
Appreciate it.
We missed his question, unfortunately. His question was Natalee Holloway's family well-to-do? Were they rich? And he says in some cases the victims' families have financial means, which gives them more access and visibility as opposed to race.
My understanding is that they were an upper middle class family.
Yeah, they weren't rich. They weren't like the Menendez rich,
but they had enough money to make some noise.
To make some noise, some
attorneys,
and get some good lawyers.
They hired local lawyers down there in Aruba and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So that takes some money. And last thing, real quick, and this is a no duh, Ted. You want me to read it or you want to read it?
Go ahead.
Okay, this is a fun Friday story. Is the influencer grift finally coming to an end? I know Ted hates online influencers.
I hate the idea of influencers. Like, what the fuck is an influencer?
I know. Off. I don't know. I mean, this is what we're looking at on screen. Sometimes they're celebrities. Sometimes they're just regular people.
If the Russians attack Europe in order to kill the influencers, I'm on Team Russia. I will volunteer with the Russian Federation Armed Forces.
To just bomb the influencer.
Yeah, just bomb the influencer. Even if you have to take out like a bunch of innocent like children to get the influencers, it's worth it. Do it.
Then Ted will show up at the
Israelis can redirect their Gaza genocide to going after genociding influencers, I'm on Team IDF.
So Ted's not alone in this, apparently. Apparently, a new study's out, 71% of consumers regret the purchases they made through influencer recommendation, with only 33% believing the influencers actually use the products that
because
they promote.
The influencers are just told to say this. They're just like, they don't.
This is a big
really...
nota. So they say the trust gap stems from inauthentic engagement, lack of transparency, and overly polished content. Good thing for us, Ted. We're not polished at all. So
no, there's no danger here on the TMI show of that.
Totally authentic. No polish.
And this
on
is
this
a 100% duck lip free broadcast.
That's true. I mean, look, I could probably, if I had more money, maybe I would go waste it into lip fillers or something, but I don't. But yeah,
give me a break.
We're authentic because we're unpolished, Ted. 40% of consumers say relatability is the top reason they trust an influencer. 81%.
Those ladies are not relatable to whom?
I don't know. And it says while 81% of influencers use AI in content creation, 35% of consumers distrust AI generated posts, and 61% want AI use disclosed. 56% of influencers admitted to promoting products they don't even like, and 33% have admitted to buying followers and buying engagement. Consumers now favor creators who feel genuine and share real personal stories.
Wow.
Yeah, that's just a lot of wow. A lot of wow, where it's like, how long did people think this was going to last? That like these
it went on way too long. It's been like 15 years. I mean,
that long? These fucking people are multi-millionaires, Ted. Many times over.
With very small brain of cat. Like, yeah.
Yes. But many times millionaires, many times over. This is what they're providing the world. This is what we're looking at on the screen. Like, this is
like, I believe George Foreman actually liked to grill. You know what I mean? Like,
no, that I believed. Rest in peace, George Foreman, and God bless all the Georges that he has. The George 1, 2, 3, 4, all his kids named George. But I think he was authentic.
If Jay Leno were to rep a car, I'd believe him because he loves cars. Jay loves cars. Yeah,
we know. Everyone knows that.
And I don't think he would.
We know.
I don't think he'd rep a car if he didn't like it.
Oh, I agree. But like this is what we're looking at here. And these people have become gazillionaires. And as it turns out, it's mostly fake.
It's all bullshit.
And people are starting to finally understand that because some rando posts about liking whatever, that you shouldn't buy it. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Is like it's increasingly. People who are famous aren't well known. I mean, like often the New York Post will have some article about so-and-so breaks up with so-and-so. And I'm like, who are they? I've never even heard of them. And they're like on some reality show, or the other person's like an influencer. And you're like, you're using their names as if most people would know who they were. I bet 99% of frequent newspaper readers wouldn't even know who they were. So it's just really, famous people are obscure now. It's very strange.
Like, I don't, like, Brittany Dawn Fitness.
Who the hell is she? I mean, if Brittany
Dawn, influencer,
if Brittany Dawn broke into my apartment and killed Clovis, I wouldn't be able to identify her to the police because
some blonde chick with short hair.
Yeah, with bad eyelashes. Oh well,
with giant fake eyelashes.
That's every old Gen Zer. What are you gonna do?
And overfilled lips, overfilled duck lips. And the cops would be like, Ted, we got about 20 million people in the city that look like that.
I'm sorry. We'd like to help, but
we'd like to help, bring Clovis's killer to justice, but you've just described every woman in Manhattan.
Right. There's nothing we can do. Call us when you have some details. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think this is the end is nigh, influencers, because you guys are not real. You're inauthentic, and people are,
from your lips, from your non-duck lips to God's
that's
ears.
right.
To God's
From my
ears.
natural, unfilled lips to God's ears.
A lot of people think that I have fillers because of my.
For a white
lips.
dude, Ted, you're doing pretty good with the lips for a white dude.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's not bad. Not bad at all.
All right.
So
I think it's time.
So that'll do it for
we
our
have premium
our Friday.
content to create. Let's.
Oh, Robbie, do we have an ad that anything from any? Okay, nothing today. So we're about to go do our premium stuff to post up later today.
Yeah, it's not going to be live.
Thank you guys for being here.
You don't have to stick around right now. But
yeah, don't stick around looking for us. We're going to post it up as a video live on Rumble Premium a little bit later this evening for your
do you want to
weird
tease it?
Friday enjoyment.
I'll tease it.
Ted can tease it.
All right, so we're going to be talking about a new study on cat behavior. You might not know that they use their left and their right nostrils differently. And now this also applies to dogs. And we're going to be able to give you all sorts of tips for how to basically take orders from your cat and do what your cat needs you to do. Also, there's this crazy meth head who decided to mix it up with an alligator unpredictably. Well, actually, things did get pretty unpredictable. Florida man story, crazy Florida man story. The collapse in global fertility. Did you know that, like in countries like in South Korea, the fertility rate is 0.7, which basically means each two-person couple is generating like less than 3/4 of a person. If this continues, I mean, like South Korean cities will literally empty out, and their population will decline by about 2/3 within 30, 40, 50 years. I mean, it'll be like a ghost town, and that's hardly the only country where that's happening.
That's about like Ukraine.
The only thing that's saving the U.S. is that we're importing illegal immigrants. Hi, Robbie. And we also, there's this crazy, like, Republican MAGA congressman be sucking up to Trump like you can't believe. There's one congressman who wants to rename Dulles Airport, with the big international airport there in D.C., after the Donald. They want to issue $250 bills with Trump's mug on them.
We're going to get rid of the penny and issue a useless $250?
And they want, yeah, exactly. And they want to, and there's a new bill to rename the subway system in D.C. after MAGA. So literally, that's legislation by your elected officials. We'll get into all of that in the Rumble Premium thing that we're about to record. And we will release later in the day for Friday.
It'll be a fun Friday premium episode of the most random shit that you didn't know. So,
but that you need to know. Otherwise, your cat will eat your eyes.
Well, yeah, that's just Clovis. He's plotting. So thank you guys. Have a great weekend. Thanks for being here. Make sure you guys smash that thumbs up, that like button, so you help this show continue to grow. Once again, we have an IOU for nerds since we missed the question. So the next time we have a weird guest, a weird random guest about whatever.
Oh yeah.
You get an IOU question. Freebie IOU. And we'll post it up there. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you back here on Monday. Boo.
Monday.
No. It's said nobody Monday. Ever. No, said nobody ever in the world. All right, guys. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Adios, amigos. Bye.